Hey friends, settle in, loosen the straps on any metaphorical helmets you're wearing, and dim the room until it feels like you've slipped between candle-lit stone walls. Before we drag chainmail through the sweltering dog days of medieval July, do me a tiny favor. Tap that subscribe button, ring the rusty iron bell so it clanks in your notifications, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Bonus points if you're already half melted by summer heat. I read every note, and yes, I picture each of you as rugged squires nursing lukewarm ale while trying not to nod off. Now, angle a fan toward your face, imagine the hum as distant cicadas, and let's sweat through history together. Picture dawn in 1381, somewhere in the rolling fields outside Toulouse. The meadow grass is already damp with humidity, and dragonflies hover like miniature lances. Nearby, a wooden pavilion flaps lazily. Too little breeze, too much fabric. 8 men form a semicircle, silently contemplating a gleaming suit of plate armor propped on a stand. It looks magnificent, polished steel catching the early light, articulated elbows promising heroic flexibility, fluted breastplate carved with a faint vine motif. It also weighs more than a modern car engine and retains heat with the dedication of a brick bread oven. No one says this out loud because knighthood is 90% performance and 10% blisters. The squire in charge of buckling straps rubs his palms on his tunic, already sweating at the thought of sweat. Armor in the late 14th century had evolved from clanky mail shirts into near-scientific shells. Smiths from Milan to Nuremberg competed to layer iron and steel in lattices that would shrug off arrows. Unfortunately, physics has no sense of chivalry. Metal conducts heat quickly, but once it's warmed through, it traps that warmth like a jealous dragon guarding gold. In July, with sun hammering down and humidity coating everything in syrup, stepping into plate is voluntary roasting. Medieval fight manuals politely skip the chapter called How Not to Faint Before Swing 3. Contemporary chroniclers do mention men growing faint or falling into a stupor, their polite code for heat stroke. They couldn't tweet warnings, they just recorded deaths in the margins and carried on. Our imaginary knight, Sir Renaud, hasn't slept well. The night before, he lay on a straw mattress inside that pavilion, air heavy with the musk of oiled leather. Every hour an owl screeched or a groom coughed, and each time he jolted awake, heart thudding beneath his linen undershirt. Aketon, they called it, quilted layers meant to cushion skin from steel's bite. Problem, the aketon itself is basically a fabric duvet. Renaud's pulse never slowed, sweat pooled under his shoulders, the straw stuck to the back of his neck. At dawn, he rose feeling like a boiled carrot. Still, pride demanded routine. Morning prayers, a hasty cup of watered wine, and then armor. First came chores for the legs, iron splints riveted to leather, strapped tight behind calves. Each buckle meant bending down, which squeezed his diaphragm and made his head swim. Squat too fast, black spots bloom at the edge of vision. Up next, cuisses for thighs, polans for knees, and greaves covering shins like oversized thimbles. By the time his feet slid into pointed sabatons, he'd already lost a pint of water. Yet the worst lay ahead, the cuirass. 2 curved plates, back and breast, clamped together like a steel sandwich around his torso. The squire tightened a belt at the waist until Renaud could hardly inflate his lungs. In February, that constriction felt secure. In July, it felt criminal. Leather straps creaked, rivets dug, sun topped the horizon. Heat radiated off the armor's mirror shine and seared any exposed skin. Renaud lifted an arm experimentally. Air could no longer circulate beneath his armpit, so sweat simply pooled there, then trickled along ribs until the linen slurped it up. He imagined fungi blooming in real time. Around him, the other knights performed the same sweaty pantomime, though no one admitted distress. Shame is the true universal language of the chivalric class. We often picture knights galloping in full plate, banners snapping, visors down. Reality check: if you sealed a man inside that shell in July and made him sprint, you'd have a sizzling human pocket pie by lunchtime. Period battle accounts reveal frequent pauses for helmets to be lifted, water flasks passed, and breaths dragged in greedily. Chronicler Jean Froissart describes tournaments where attendants dashed onto the field to dab knights' faces with wet cloths, not for show, but to prevent collapse. In a society that equated endurance with honor, fainting from heat could torpedo a reputation faster than losing a joust. Speaking of helmets, imagine sliding a steel pot around your skull after it's baked in the sun all morning. Inside a bassinet, conical helmet with a hinged visor, the air turns into a sauna. Your breath rebounds, condenses, and rains back on your chin. Vision narrows to slits, now fogging. Remove it? Only if you fancy an arrow through the eye. Knights improvised. Some lined helmets with damp moss, hoping evaporative cooling would work miracles. Others stuffed aromatic herbs, mint, rosemary, so at least the stench of their own sweat smelled vaguely like a garden. Of course, mint doesn't lower core temperature. It just masks the fact that you're essentially roasting alive. Training yards adapted by scheduling combat drills at dawn and dusk, but real wars refused to consult almanacs. Battle of Crécy, late August. Poitiers, mid-September, still sweltering in Gascony. Soldiers marching in midday heat learned grim hacks. Loosen gorgets to let air trickle down the spine. Pour water into gauntlets so palms stayed wet. Chew salt to replace electrolytes before anyone knew the word. Medieval medical texts warned that excess heat inflameth the humors, leading to great distemper of the mind. Doctor speak for hallucinations. Knights hallucinating in plate might swing at phantoms, which could thin friendly ranks faster than enemy arrows. But let's talk logistics. A single armored cavalry charge looked glorious, yet backstage manpower was absurd. For every mounted knight, at least one groom toted spare rivets, water casks, and a pry bar for emergency extraction if joints seized. Evacuation procedures were improvisational. Tip the knight onto a tarp, slide off pieces in reverse order, hope he didn't vomit inside his helmet first. Remember, dehydration can induce nausea long before collapse. Medieval chronicles politely omit descriptions of knights puking in bassinets, but archaeology finds acid-etched corrosion inside some surviving helmets. Maybe from sweat, maybe from stomach acid. Either way, glamorous. Modern experiments confirm the misery. Historians at Leeds Armories once monitored volunteers in replica plate walking on treadmills. Heart rates soared, oxygen consumption skyrocketed, core temperatures spiked within minutes. The participants trudged under fluorescent lights, not even full July sun, yet researchers called off some trials early to avoid heat stroke. Knights were fitter, yes, but physiology sets limits. Human cores hit fatal thresholds around 41 degrees, 105.8 Fahrenheit. Medieval chronicle entries noting warriors taken by an evil vapor are likely heat casualties translated into poetic vagueness. So how did anyone function? Short answer, they often didn't. During sieges, armored patrols might restrict duty cycles to 15 minutes, swapping fresh men like relay racers. Shields doubled as parasols when stationary. Cloaks soaked in water draped over shoulders, evaporating and buying precious degrees of cooling. One treatise suggests smearing pig fat mixed with vinegar on armpits and groins, medieval anti-chafing balm that probably smelled like a spoiled picnic. Better than raw flesh, though. Chafing beneath a gorget could fester within a day, turning to sepsis by week's end. We haven't even addressed the psychological weight. Imagine knowing your lord expects heroic bravery, while every nerve is screaming, "Take this off now!" The result? Irritability, errors in judgment, and resentment toward commanders sitting under awnings. Letters from foot soldiers occasionally gripe about great men shining like fish in pans. A spicy jab, considering writing such sarcasm, could earn flogging. But heat strips decorum as quick as armor strips hydration. Still, there were cultural workarounds. Feast days in July often featured water blessing rituals. After Mass, townspeople and soldiers alike dipped hands in fountains supposedly sanctified against fever. Knights filled flasks there, hoping holy molecules cooled hotter tempers. Troubadours sang ballads of glittering men returning victorious despite the dragon sun, reinforcing narrative over nuance. Survivors became living legends, casualties became footnotes. In that climate, literal and figurative, complaining about heat risked sounding ungrateful for the armor that kept arrows out. Yet nature had the last laugh. Consider cuir bouilli, boiled leather hardened into lighter breastplates for poorer men-at-arms. It weighed less than steel and breathed slightly better, but after hours in July sun, it could warp, pinching deeper than iron ever would. Some soldiers allegedly soaked their leather in vinegar each morning, hoping acidity preserved flexibility. Vinegar evaporates, leaving behind a tang that mingles with sweat until the entire battlefield smells like salad dressing under a furnace lid. By high noon, Sir Renaud's gauntleted fingers tremble as he lifts a wooden mug. The sun stands directly overhead. Shadows pool like ink beneath horses, and cicadas drone a relentless dirge. Renaud's pulse thrums in his ears, blood thick as mead. He wonders how many battles were lost not to enemy blades, but to collective heat-dazed stupor. He dares not voice the thought. Instead, he nods at his squire, signals to tighten the last strap, and steps forward toward whatever skirmish or tournament awaits, pride propelling sweat-slick legs. All right, quick equipment check before we wade back into our medieval heat wave. Make sure you're subscribed. It's like fastening your helmet pin. Do it once and you're covered. Give the video a thumbs up so the algorithm squire knows to polish it. And drop a comment confessing your most regrettable outfit choice in summer. Linen tunics? Fine. Polyester cosplay armor at a July Renaissance fair? We need to hear those tales. Now take one deep, cool breath. Pretend it's dawn mist rolling off a river, and let's slip straight back into the furnace. The sun has climbed 2 pike lengths higher. Sir Renaud's company finally receives the order to move. 73 men, half of them armored, the rest padded in lighter jacks, begin the slow trek toward a low ridge where scouts reported enemy banners at breakfast. It's a mile, maybe 2, an easy stroll in April. But in late July, every footstep is a negotiation between honor and self-preservation. Boots sink into baked turf, the texture of stale bread. Dust puffs in lazy clouds that cling to sweaty faces like flour on a loaf. A drummer sets the beat, thump, thump. But each strike feels cruel, reminding lungs they're 2 sizes too small under cuirasses that have already heated to kettle temperature. Watch the body language as they march. Knights tilt helmets back on vervels, hunting for airflow. Billmen tip heads forward so the breeze can whistle through nasal openings. One man keeps yanking at the crease where his beavor meets his gorget, a steel pinch that oozes pinkish sweat the moment he lets go. Every 30 yards, someone coughs up phlegm dust, brown streaks on white linen that will never fully wash out. Historians love ledger entries: who fought, who died, what ransom got paid, but rarely do they describe the small, shame-soaked moments happening now, like the youngest squire, Etienne, trudging behind Renaud and secretly praying his bladder holds out. There is no dignified way to urinate in full plate while on the march. You either ask for a halt, delaying the column, or you trust the absorbency of your chouses and pray nobody notices the dark stain. Etienne chooses option 3, silent suffering. Dehydration, after all, removes the urge. Ahead, the ridge shimmers. Heat waves distort pennants into floating snakes. The enemy could be 500 men or 50 scarecrows. Mirage levels the field. Commanders order a halt in an olive grove. Merciful shade. But stepping out of sunlight into leaf-dappled darkness only reveals how roasted everyone already is. Helmets come off first, like iron fruit plucked from sweating trees. Squires unscrew visor pivots that have expanded in the heat. Hinges squeal, releasing gusts of sour breath. The field surgeon, Master Hugo, arrives with a wooden bucket of water that smells faintly of fish. It was a bait tub yesterday. He doesn't care. He orders each knight to drink 3 mouthfuls, no more. The rest must ration. Hugo is not a doctor in our sense. He's mostly seen arrow extractions and broken bones, but he's learned the danger signs: flushed skin beneath the pallor, cracked lips, confusion. He checks pupils, asks simple questions. What saint's day is it? If a knight slurs Saturday, Hugo chalks him as half-cooked and quietly nudges the commander to rotate fresh men into the vanguard. Renaud passes the test, barely. When Hugo asks the saint's day, Renaud answers Saint Margaret of Antioch, though he privately doubts himself. Spoiler, it's Saint James. Hugo nods and moves on. He knows pride can prop a man up longer than water sometimes. Still, he scribbles a note on a wax tablet. Renaud, watch. In shaded respite, armor becomes paradoxically colder outside than in, like a pot yanked off embers. This brief chill causes muscles to cramp. Knights stretch awkwardly, arms clicking against pauldrons, trying to loosen stiffened backs. Etienne uses the lull to unbuckle a vambrace and scratch a wicked heat rash blossoming on his forearm. The relief is near religious. Then he tightens the strap again, wincing as steel meets raw skin. Trumpets blare, a single sustained blast. Shade break is over. Commanders have spotted dust plumes, enemy light cavalry flanking from the west. The olive grove empties in organized panic. Helmets slammed on, laces jerked tight. Horses wrestled from tree trunks where they'd been tied. The animals protest, ears flat, nostrils flaring like bellows. Horses overheat even faster than men under mail, and some already show froth on bridles. A mounted knight in July becomes a mobile furnace. The horse radiates body heat upward, the sun scorches downward, the cuirass traps everything. Renaud swings into the saddle and feels an instant wave of nausea. He grips the pommel, head swimming. For a blink, he sees black, no battlefield, just an obsidian curtain. He forces one deep breath, another. Vision snaps back, but now his heart hammers irregularly. He knows the tales, knights falling dead before they draw swords, hearts cooked by invisible fire. He murmurs a prayer to St. George, patron of soldiers and sufferers of fevers, if folklore can be stretched. We're stretching everything today. The column advances at a trot uphill. Trot rhythm shakes breastplates against bruised ribs. Each impact echoes like a kettle drum inside the helmet. Up ahead, archers peel left, lining the grove's edge. They're bareheaded, red-faced, and sweating like barrels, but at least can breathe freely. One archer, a wiry Welshman, yells good-natured abuse at the knights. "Pretty tin ducks, meltin' already?" No one answers. Conserving breath outranks banter. Halfway up the ridge, the real trouble starts. Dust kicked by cavalry mixes with pollen and heat haze, forming a choking veil. Visibility shrinks to mere yards. The trumpeter behind Renaud blares a signal, but the sound warps as though funneled through wool. Renaud realizes his ears are ringing, a first sign of heat exhaustion. Tunnel vision creeps. He blinks hard, shakes his head. The helmet clangs and amplifies the ringing. Bad idea. An order rings out, "Lances to the ready," but confusion spreads. Some riders fumble, others hesitate. Muscles obey slower in stifling armor. One poor fellow drops his lance entirely. When he leans to grab it, he slumps sideways and tumbles off the horse, hitting ground with a hollow gong. Squires rush, drag him to shade. Master Hugo later records the death as sunstroke. He writes it in Latin so it looks official. Percussio solis. Doesn't change the cause. Some chroniclers claim medieval armies were unstoppable machines. In truth, July turned them into reluctant molasses flows. On this ridge, the enemy cavalry never materializes beyond scattered scouts. After 15 excruciating minutes, commanders call a retreat. Not a rout, just tactical repositioning. Knights pivot horses downhill, lances still couched, lungs desperate for heavier air near the riverbank. Back at camp, armor removal resembles surgery. Squires pry cuirasses apart with wooden wedges because leather straps have shrunk in heat, locking buckles solid. When Renaud's breastplate finally pops free, a steamy gust escapes like opening a bread oven. Linen aketon beneath is soaked translucent. Squire Etienne tries to peel it off, but the cloth has fused to Renaud's armpits with dried salt. They pour water, loosen, gently tug. Skin comes away like old parchment. Renaud bites his lip until blood mixes with sweat on his chin. After triage, Master Hugo dispatches 2 grooms to fetch willow bark tea, primitive aspirin, and sour ale cut with mint. Electrolytes weren't a concept yet, but medieval medics intuited that bitter, mineral-rich drinks revived men faster than plain water. They also suspected overheating befuddled the animal spirits housed in the brain. So Hugo instructs a page to fan patients with goose-wing fans, directing fresh airs to restore those spirits. The breeze is warm, but placebo matters. Late afternoon, and thunder murmurs on the horizon. Summer storms, nature's only mercy in medieval July. Camp swells with hope as clouds build, steel gray and towering. Knights stripped to shirts stand like scarecrows, arms spread, wishing for rain. When the first drops hit, they hiss off hot armor, lying discarded like giant silver beetles. Renaud tilts his head back, mouth open, collecting sky-cooled water. For a moment, relief borders on ecstasy. Yet storms bring hazards. Lightning loves tall metal objects. The quartermaster screams at grooms to flip breastplates face down and drag helmets under wagons. Too late. One stray bolt cracks into a pike rack, splintering ash shafts and sending blue sparks skittering over cuirasses. No casualties, but everyone's courage shivers. Renaud murmurs gratitude the bolt didn't choose his sword. Night falls with surprising chill. After heat stroke hours, bodies can't self-regulate, so shivering creeps in. Knights pull wool mantles over damp shirts, teeth chattering. Fire pits flare. Squires hang linen akatans near flames, hoping to dry salt crusts before dawn. The smell, sweat, smoke, wet leather, clings like second skin. No one cares. Survival outranks perfume. Around one fire, old Sergeant Guillaume spins cautionary tales for younger men. "Remember the Battle of La Roche," he rasps. "4 good lords fell dead inside their helms before swords crossed." He taps temple, scarred by an old burn. "Sun is a patient killer. She waits for fools." Etienne listens wide-eyed, glancing at stars that now sparkle in post-storm clarity. He can't decide which is worse, dying by blade or by invisible furnace. Elsewhere, Chaplain Brother Martin conducts Compline prayers beneath a makeshift awning. He chooses Psalm 32, lines about mercy and hiding place from trouble. Knights mumble responses, fatigue dragging their words. Some skip service, collapsed on bedrolls, still wearing leggings because unlacing them requires effort they no longer possess. Midnight. Renaud dreams vivid fever dreams, fields of molten armor, riverbeds of ale, phantom hands unbuckling straps that tighten again like snakes. He wakes gasping. Nearby, Etienne snores softly, face haloed by fire glow. Renaud lies awake, pondering tomorrow's march. No date set, yet the campaign season stretches ahead like a sun-baked road. August promises worse. Pause and zoom out. Why didn't medieval commanders simply fight in spring or autumn? Sometimes they tried, but harvest calendars, religious festivals, and the slow logistics of feudal levies often forced summer campaigns. Barons needed men back home to bring in wheat by September. Thus, wars launched after planting and before harvest, right in high summer. Knights considered heat a trial from God, not a logistical misstep. Chronicles praise those who endured the furnace of July as proof of divine favor. There's a twisted logic. If victory despite heat came, surely God picked sides. Armorers sought solutions. By late 15th century, some experimented with fluting patterns that increased rigid strength while reducing metal mass. A Gothic corset for steel. Lighter plates heated slightly less. Italian smiths toyed with vent holes punched near armpits and groin. Functional, if not fashionable. One Milanese manuscript even depicts detachable elbow discs you could remove at rest, like rolling up sleeves. Evidence remains sketchy, but innovation often whispers before it shouts. Tournaments adapted by introducing courtesy pauses. Heralds could call for visors up, helmets off, a sip of wine, then resume. Purists scoffed, too soft. Yet accidents decreased. Real war had no such courtesy, but returning veterans silently acknowledged the wisdom. When firearms emerged,
Heavy armor waned, but not just from bullet penetration. Soldiers realized musket fire changed engagement ranges, making prolonged marches more common than melee charges. Endurance trumped invincibility. By the 17th century, cuirasses slimmed, limb plates vanished, and broad-brimmed hats replaced helmets, shade over shrapnel. Heat, in its patient tyranny, helped nudge military fashion.
But back to our camp. Dawn creeps. Roosters crow from village ruins. Dew settles on pikes. Knights wake stiff, tongue thick, pulse fluttery but alive. Squire Etienne fetches a basin of river water, pours it over Renaud's head. The shock jolts him fully conscious. He mutters thanks, then rubs raw skin where straps sat yesterday. Blisters have ripened to angry welts. He'll wrap them in linen strips soaked in honey, sticky but antibacterial. He wonders how many more mornings he can endure before honor yields to survival. He's not alone questioning. Across Europe, countless armored men privately weighed similar thoughts. Some turned to patron saints of cooling, Saint Medard, invoked against bad weather, Saint James again for safe travel. Others bribed armorers for lighter harness or forgot pieces in camp. Chroniclers occasionally scolded knights for appearing in battle half-armed, a polite accusation of cowardice or practicality. We close the day under blood-orange sunrise. Our weary column readies to march again, silhouettes against broiling sky. No one talks about heat aloud. They simply tighten belts, adjust sallets, and ride forward, each heartbeat a blacksmith's hammer inside iron walls. And that, viewers, is your window into Day 2 of July in Plate. Before we saddle up for another scorching march, do 2 quick favors for the channel. Hit the like button, think of it as greasing the mail links so nothing sticks. And subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of historically sweaty misery. Drop a comment with the hottest place you've ever tried to sleep. I'll be comparing your answers to tonight's medieval barrack temperatures just for fun. All set? Good. Buckle that mental gorget. You're about to feel the sun hammer straight through steel. The third dawn arrives like a blacksmith's bellows, blowing fire before light. Sir Renaud wakes to the rasp of sand in his throat. The camp's cookpots haven't even steamed yet, but the air already tastes of furnace bricks and horse dung. Overnight, 2 more men collapsed from ague of the heat. Master Hugo's bedside way of writing, probably dead, definitely boiled. Their breastplates now lie beside the surgeon's tent, dented where frantic fists beat for release. Renaud's own cuirass stares at him, convex plates reflecting a cruel sunrise. He delays donning it, instead stretching arms overhead. Every muscle protests like wine barrels in summer bursting their hoops. His squire Etienne approaches with breakfast, a wooden platter bearing yesterday's stale trencher soaked in watered ale, carbs and liquid in one soggy slab. Renaud forces half down, chew, swallow, ignore the sour note that might be early spoilage or just his imagination. Around them, camp rouses, tent pegs yanked, horses bridled, pike blocks counting off under low curses. One archer squints at the sky and mutters, "Red dawn, red blood." Not an omen, just the product of dust clouds refracting light. But fear rides superstition the way a knight rides a destrier. Armor time! Etienne has learned a trick. He hangs each steel piece near the cold ashes of last night's fires, using residual moisture to cool plates for a fleeting moment. It's a kindness like a snowflake in a kiln. Cuirass first, lower back plate pressed, front plate buckled. The metal feels almost pleasant for 3 heartbeats, then saturates with body heat and becomes its own sun. Next, pauldrons, rear braces, couters, vambraces. Each added segment narrows range of motion until Renaud resembles a jointed statue. Etienne cinches the last strap, careful to tuck raw skin welts under linen padding. Helmet? Not yet. Helmets wait for the commander's order. Until then, face the day bareheaded and pray no scouting arrow finds you early. Orders ripple down the line, strike camp, and march 2 leagues west to intercept supplies. A logistics mission. No battlefield glory, but no shade either. Supply caravans often follow river valleys. Unfortunately, valley floors reflect heat upward like giant mirrors. The column sets off. Armor clangs syncopated with clopping hooves. Renaud counts steps as distraction. Every 100, he rotates his shoulders inside his cuirass, trying to keep blood moving. Beside him rides Lady Constanza, a Portuguese knight banneret whose family coat shows 3 mermaids. She wears lighter Italian plate, visorless sallet, fluted breastplate, mail fold. Still brutal in July, but she's learned to drape a thin linen cloth soaked in vinegar beneath the sallet. It smells like pickled onions, yet cools face and neck. Renaud envies the idea. Etienne notes it for later. An hour passes. Black flies discover sweat rivers on exposed skin. They crawl under gauntlet cuffs and bite knuckles. Swatting is tricky in steel mittens. Knights twitch, curse, let the insects feast. Minor stings compared to the internal broil. Ahead, a stir. Scouts return, waving cloth signals, green flag twice, then red. Translation: supply wagons spotted, guarded, but terrain obstructs cavalry charge. Commander de Montaigne calls halt, convenes council under a scraggly fig tree absolutely too small for comfort. Renaud, as banner lord, joins. 7 armored figures hunch in narrow shade, dripping like wax candles. De Montaigne lays out the map, sweat blotching parchment. Plan: archers flank through a dry gully. Knights dismount, lead horses, then remount for a downhill rush once archers sow chaos. Simple on paper. Reality: knights must fight on an empty stomach under noon sun after a 9-mile hike. Renaud swallows the urge to protest. Honor outranks common sense. Preparations begin. Helmets finally on. Etienne laces Renaud's before, then taps twice to check airflow. Inside the enclosure, Renaud's breath rebounds hot, steamy, tinged with stomach acid from skipped lunch. Chin strap chafes the blister blooming overnight. He grits teeth and recites a mnemonic. Steel is stronger than sun. Lies help. The march resumes into the gully, a channel of cracked clay walls that trap heat like an upturned cauldron. Horses snort and stumble on loose scree. One destrier slips, wrenches fetlock. Its rider dismounts, curses, knows he'll fight on foot. Renaud's mount, Alazan, fared slightly better, but foam lines its neck in sticky froth. Etienne wipes it with a rag that's immediately soaked. They reach staging point, a copse of parched shrubs overlooking the dusty road where merchant wagons trundle. escorted by spearmen bearing rival heraldry. Knights kneel behind scrub, lances laid horizontal to avoid glints. Renaud's knees crack as he crouches. Heat waves shimmer off his helm, blurring vision. Signal arrow arcs skyward, green fletching. Archers unleash a volley. Screams echo. Chaos erupts below. De Montaigne waves his pennon. Charge! Knights haul themselves into saddles. Some need 2 tries. Slick gauntlets slipping on reins. Renaud spurs Alazan. Horse leaps downslope. Acceleration forces oven air through visor slits, baking eyes. Dust flies. The world becomes a brown blizzard. He levels his lance, picks a target. Spearman shielding wagon driver. Impact. Lance shatters, shock ripples up arm, jars shoulder against pauldron edge. Spearman flips like a rag doll. Renaud's momentum carries him through, but latent heat stroke turns exhilaration to vertigo. He slashes left with sword, but blade feels weighted with lead. Peripheral vision narrows, a tunnel of sepia light. Behind, Lady Constanza unhorses a guard, then nearly collapses herself. Her salad cloth has dried to a crusty rag, no cooling left. She rips visor up mid-combat for air. Someone's dagger nicks her cheek. Blood mixes with sweat, slides down throat, metallic and warm. Within minutes, resistance crumbles. Guards scatter. Knights secure wagons containing salted fish, barley sacks, 2 barrels of Spanish wine. Victory! But bodies litter road. Some struck by arrows, others simply sprawled, armor intact. Hugo rolls them over. Heat casualties, not wounds. He scribbles again, fervor ardens, burning fever. Triumph doesn't taste sweet under a broiling sky. Knights slump in shade of wagons. Squires rip helmets free. The stench of trapped breath clouds out. Etienne hands Renaud a wineskin of watered vinegar. Renaud gulps. Liquid scalds cracked lips, yet cools throat's furnace. He gasps thanks, voice raspy as gravel. They still need to escort supplies back, meaning a return march in afternoon blaze. Hugo protests. Men will drop. De Montaigne compromises. Camp at a ruined mill by a spring. Depart at dusk. Smart, rare. At the mill. Cold spring water trickles through limestone, miracle liquid. Knights line up, immersion style. Helm off, head dunked, gasp. Steam rises from hot steel, sizzling under water splash. Etienne persuades Renaud to strip cuirass entirely. They lower it into spring for a few seconds, cooling, scrubbing blood flecks. When Renaud dons it again, it's shockingly cold. He shivers, then welcomes relief. Lady Constanza's cheek wound cleaned, stitched, covered with cobwebs, nature's band-aid. She jokes weakly that spiders spend better linen than tailors. Sun slides west, shadows elongate, but residual heat radiates from earth stones. Nights here never truly cool. They just burn less. Men share victory rations, salt fish soaked in wine to rehydrate. Salt feels suicidal, but electrolytes matter. Hugo distributes willow bark again, plus handfuls of pennyroyal leaves to chew. Folk remedy for bad airs. Tastes like minty dirt. Some spit it out. Others trust superstition. Campfire tales resume, but softer. Sergeant Guillaume recounts a knight who survived Crusader sieges by lining his helmet interior with sheep's wool soaked in rosewater.
Smelled like a bridal bed, but he never fainted. Etienne scribbles note, "Ask shepherds for wool."
A young page recites a newer rumor. Armorers in Prague experiment with perforated breastplates, pattern of tiny holes covered by mail drape to stop arrows but vent heat. Older knights scoff, holes invite pikes. Yet curiosity flickers. Renaud withdraws from chatter, sits by spring, helmet off. Moonlight silver plates his mailed coif. He studies his reflection in water, eyes bloodshot, lips cracked. He wonders how many iterations of campaign misery forge legends. Maybe bards will sing of today's charge. They won't mention searing lungs or heat rashes. Glory edits. He murmurs silent vows. If he survives, he'll fund a chapel, perhaps with large windows for airflow. Past midnight. Crickets drone. Men sleep fitfully on thin mats, sweating beneath starry quilts. Etienne dozes leaning against cuirass like a steel pillow. Renaud dreams again, but this time cool breezes blow through stone cloisters. In dream, armor sits on a mannequin, polished, inert. He walks free in linen alone, no weight, no heat. A promise or a taunt. A distant thunder roll wakes him. It's only wagons creaking as sentries shift, but for a heartbeat he imagines rain. Disappointment tastes like iron. He checks horizon, another red dawn forming. Tomorrow will roast the same. And you, viewer, survived another sweltering segment. Before the campfires even wink out, do me and this half-boiled brigade a solid. Hit that like button so the algorithm knows you're still breathing, and subscribe if you want more historical heat strokes delivered straight to your feed. Drop a comment about the single most uncomfortable outfit you've ever had to wear. Weddings, cosplay conventions, you name it, and we'll see if it beats tonight's steel-plated sauna. Ready? Good. Cinch your mental chin strap because we're stepping straight from yesterday's furnace into tonight's fever dream. The wagons creak out of the ruined mill just after dusk, axles complaining in a slow, arthritic rhythm. Fireflies hover like drifting embers. And for one delirious moment, Sir Renaud imagines the world has flipped. Day hides in shadows, and night sets itself on fire. He wipes sweat off his brow again. Even after sunset, the armor radiates stored heat like a bread oven fresh out of a bakery. Inside each breastplate, there's still a personal sunrise, merciless and bright. They push west along a moonlit cart track bordered by brittle shrubs that crackle under passing hooves. Etienne walks at Renaud's stirrup, carrying two helms on one arm, Renaud's and Lady Constance's. De Montaigne has allowed breathing hour, a new concession where visorless heads may touch night air until danger draws near. It's a fragile truce between discipline and survival. Ahead, the line wobbles. Sergeant Guillaume, riding point, raises his hand. A halt. Renaud listens. One heartbeat. Two. Then hears it. The strained pant of a horse working too hard. Not a destrier. Lighter, quicker. A messenger? Or worse, enemy outrider shadowing the convoy. Guillaume gestures, 3 fingers, then a fist. Prepare to mount helms. A groan passes through the column, as if steel itself sighs.
Etienne obediently sets Renaud's bavure, sliding leather tongue into buckle. The metal's inner surface is still damp from spring water, but that little comfort fades the moment it seals around his jaw. Sound narrows. The night's cricket orchestra muffles into a distant rattle. He can feel his own pulse thumping, amplified in the confined acoustic chamber of the helm. Anxious minutes stretch. Moonlight picks out dust motes sauntering through visor slits. Then, hoofbeats, rapid, approaching. The rider bursts into view waving a white-tipped wand, their own scout returning, lungs heaving. He spits dirt and gasps. Enemy camp 2 leagues north, setting out on intercept. Good news in daylight. Tonight it's a curse. 2 leagues means forced march or prepared fight under darkness, and every soldier here is already half poached. De Montaigne decides, push onward, but detour along the riverbank where willow stands promise cooler air. Renaud swallows, tasting iron and stale vinegar. River air is wet air. Wet air and metal skins, like steaming clams in their shells. Half a league later, the convoy descends a chalky slope toward the river. At the foot, mist rises, curling around greaves and fetlocks. For a shimmering instant, each knight looks like a ghost wearing its own death armor. The temperature dips, barely, but humidity leaps, hugging skin. Under his cuirass, Renaud's linen arming shirt soaks through. Moisture has nowhere to escape, turning cloth into a simmering compress. Chafed ribs flare with renewed fury. Etienne must feel it too. The boy's simple, padded jack clings like seaweed. Everyone's breaths fog helms, turning vision slits into blurry aquariums. They cross a ford knee-deep. Horses splash, water hitting lower leg plates with delicious cold before instantly warming to body heat. A few knights mutter prayers that no sudden rainstorm flood the river behind them. Retreat lanes matter when heat's not the only killer out tonight. Past the ford, the ground turns marshy, sucking at sabatons. Progress slows. Somewhere in the darkness, a frog croaks aggressively, as if mocking their clunky march. The first casualty of nightfall isn't killed by steel. Sir Auguste, heavy-set, older, stumbles. His knee buckles. He drops sideways, armor thudding like dropped anvil. When they pry the visor open, his eyes roll back, pupils tiny pinpricks. Master Hugo checks pulse, shakes head. Heat stroke at midnight. Armor trapped the day's furnace inside and wouldn't let it go. They loosen straps, drag him to wagon, fan him with torn pennon. Nothing. A squire cracks a barrel of river water and pours it over cuirass. Steam curls. Renaud watches silently, a warning hammered louder than any sermon. An hour later, the convoy reaches crumbled church ruins chosen for rest. Stone walls hold echoing cool patches, and battered stained glass shards still glint starshine. They establish perimeter, park wagons into a C shape, post archers on half-collapsed belfry. Helmets come off again. Relief gushes across skulls like sudden snowfall. Men slump where they stand, backs against mossy stones. Renaud removes gauntlets, fingers swollen, skin pale and wrinkled as if soaked in bath. He flexes, pins and needles race along forearms. Etienne hovers with a ration.
rye bread soaked in melted cheese studded with wild leek, salt, fat, onion sharpness. Renaud savors first chew, but appetite flags. Heat blunts hunger more than fear ever did. Lady Constanza joins him, cheek bandage spotted copper brown. She carries an earthenware cup. Mint water, she whispers, from riverbank plants. He drinks. It's cool, slightly bitter, miraculous. Smart squire there, he notes. Her own. Conversation drifts to rumor again. A southern armorsmith forging articulated plates lined with thin lead channels. Fill them with water. Flexing circulates cooling liquid. Renaud snorts. A walking cistern? Maybe genius, maybe drowning hazard if pierced. But desperation births invention. Far side of camp, a quiet mutiny brews. 3 younger knights debate ditching cuirasses before next march, fighting in mail alone. It's July, not January, one argues. God gave us brains, why ignore them? Another counters, oath swore to bear full harness, break it, forfeit honor. Honor weighs heavy, even heavier than steel. Yet dehydration bends principles. De Montaigne overhears, strides over, cloak flaring. In flamelight, sweat drenches his gray beard. He speaks low so troops don't panic. Mail today, arrow tomorrow. Keep plates, boys. They nod, reluctant compliance. But Renaud sees doubt lingering like humidity. Clouds gather. Around midnight's middle watch, thunder murmurs. Air pressure thickens dough-like. First raindrop splatters Renaud's bare helm. Another, then sheets. Knights cheer weakly, until they remember wet metal rusts. Leather straps shrink, and 60 pounds of steel doubles in misery when soaked. Within minutes, ground churns to mud. Tents leak. A squire's torch sputters out. Darkness swallows everything. Yet rain pounds armor, cooling skin underneath for the first time in days. Mixed blessing. Renaud tilts face upward, mouth open, gulping sky water. Tastes cleaner than the river. Lightning flash, white silhouettes, thunder cracks. And in that roar, archers on belfry shout alarm. Movement among distant trees. Enemy patrol using storm to mask approach. De Montaigne barks orders. Form half circle, lances ready. Chaos ignites. Knights scramble, rain-slicked plates slipping beneath hurried hands. Gauntlets lost in mud, helms fastened crooked. Etienne fumbles with Renaud's visor, wet strap knots. At last click. Sealed once more, but now inside is cool, nearly cold. Breath fogs but doesn't suffocate. Enemy forms emerge through downpour, shadows with crossbows. Bolts hiss, one thunks Renaud's pauldron, glancing off. Mail-clad rebels? Maybe the same supply guards seeking revenge. Knights countercharge 3 paces, then bog down in ankle-deep ooze. Horses hinder more than help. Hooves slide sideways. Combat devolves to slogging push and parry with drenched swords. Renaud's greave sinks. He wrenches free, loses balance, collides with rival. They crash together, splash mud high as banners. Enemy tries to yank Renaud's bavor open, expose throat. Renaud headbutts instead. Visor ridge meets nose cartilage. Crunch. Foe drops. Lightning again. Renaud sees Etienne swinging staff at a crossbowman twice his size. Staff snaps, boy tumbles. Instinct, Renaud lunges, parries incoming bolt with gauntlet, pain lances through palm, but deflection saves. He grabs enemy by hood, slams into wagon wheel.
The skirmish lasts 10 heartbeats, maybe 20. Rain muffles screams. Eventually, attackers retreat into flood-dark forest, leaving 6 bodies and 2 wounded prisoners.
Knights regroup, panting steam. No casualties for them, but exhaustion intensifies. Dawn emerges behind storm clouds like a bruised peach. Rain stops, mist replaces it. Armor now chilled to marrow. Teeth chatter. Yesterday they prayed for cool, now they beg for sun. Irony sharp as lance tip. Hugo orders fires, but damp wood smolders. He breaks into supply wagon, requisitions Spanish wine barrels they'd captured, pours thin stream over kindling. Alcohol flare catches, flames roar. Knights huddle, arms outstretched, steam rising from cuirasses. Renaud unstraps breastplate. Etienne sponges interior with oil, preventing rust flash. Lady Constanza likewise tends gear, her stitched cheek bleeding anew. Rain reopened wound. She jokes, "At least cool water kept swelling down." Renaud smiles tiredly. Humor still breathes. "Morning, Council." De Montaigne addresses weary circle. Enemy main force near. Road ahead blocked. Must choose. Push through forest. Shade but ambush risk. Or climb sun-baked ridge and flank. Ridge means heat again. Forest means potential trap, but cooler. Vote tallies mixed until Renaud says, "Better to sweat than bleed." Many nod. Ridge it is. They set off mid-morning. Clouds break, promising another inferno. But armor still wet. Evaporative cooling grants brief grace. Squires encourage knights to keep cloth under cuirass moistened. Mobile bathhouse, Guillaume quips. Of course, water weight adds burden. Halfway up slope, wetness gone, heat returns double, like furnace stoked after cleaning. Knights sip rationed river water, some chew willow bark again. Noon on the ridge. The path narrows along cliff overlooking valley. Sun glares off armor, flashes visible for miles. Renaud wonders if they look like beacon fires to observers below. Suddenly, a shimmer across valley floor. Enemy column in distance, shining similarly. 2 armored serpents glimmer at one another across heat haze. Who will strike first? De Montaigne decides to bivouac on ridge, build rock screens, let enemy roast climbing slope if they dare. Defensive advantage, but means holding position in open sky all afternoon. Knights unpack shields, wedge them into cairns for shade patches scarcely big enough for a helmet. Men rotate through microshade, 15 minutes each. Etienne erects small awning from wagon canvas and lance poles. Inside, Renaud removes cuirass fully, sits in padded shirt airing raw skin. Etienne applies goose fat salve to chafed ribs. Stings, then soothes. They laugh at absurdity. Goose fat, not plate design, may decide tomorrow's survival. Archers craft makeshift sun hats. They weave willow fronds into broad crowns worn atop sallets, shading metal from direct rays. Fashion crime, tactical blessing. Lady Constanza sports one proudly, mermaids dancing beneath green halo. Late afternoon. Heat mirage dances, valley enemy remains stationary. Some sort of stalemate, both sides unwilling to cook soldiers, charging uphill. Messenger pigeons flutter between ridge and distant Allied fortress, coordinate reinforcements. Nights doze in shifts. Dreams swirl of ice wine, snowfields, naked fields uncluttered by steel. Sun begins to drop, but armor hasn't forgotten midday. Inside breastplates, air still stifling. Etienne experiments. He slips thin slats of folded bark between Renault's cuirass and arming doublet, creating vents. It helps. Tiny wind tunnels catch evening breeze. Discoveries born of desperation again. Twilight. Enemy fires ignite below. Camping. De Montaigne relaxes order. Helms off for night watch. Renault sits on cliff edge, looking down at dotted orange specks. He thinks, tomorrow may be full battle, under heat still strong though summer wanes not yet. He fingers scalloped edge of cuirass, dented by crossbow bolt. Steel saved life. Steel nearly boiled him too. Every asset is also peril. He addresses you, silent modern witness. Comfort kills stories, but stories remind us why comfort matters. So if you've stuck through this sweat-soaked saga, bless your air conditioner and press like again for good measure. In camp, someone starts low chant, old crusader hymn. Voices join, fragile but resolute, weaving through hot dusk like cool ribbon of water. For a moment, nights forget blisters, rashes, scorched lungs. They are iron choir beneath red sky, awaiting dawn bell. Night deepens. Stars blaze. Crickets resume. Sir Auguste's body, wrapped in canvas, waits burial. Earth too hard to dig earlier. At moonset, they commit him to shallow cairn, lay shattered helm as marker. Renaud whispers credo, feels chill not from air, but from imagining own fate sealed in sun-baked shell. He lies down finally, cuirass propped as windbreak. Etienne slumps beside him, already snoring. Renaud gazes at Milky Way, river of night mirroring river below, and thinks maybe heaven is just a place without July. And here we pause, halfway up a ridge, between furnace day and furnace battle. Pause your playlist of box fan white noise for just a second, friend. Hit that like button the way a weary squire slaps dust off a saddle. Then subscribe so the algorithm doesn't leave this channel stranded on some scorching medieval ridge. While you're at it, drop a comment telling me the hottest day you've ever survived and what questionable life choices, looking at you polyester cosplay, helped you roast. All set? Good, because the sun is clawing its way back over the horizon, and the knights on our ridge are about to learn that yesterday's heat was a polite introduction compared with today's grudge match. The first thing Renaud registers is the smell of iron warmed by fresh daylight. His cuirass, propped overnight as a makeshift windbreak, glows dull orange at the edges where sunrise kisses the metal. He sits up, arches his aching back, and immediately regrets it. Every muscle feels like bread dough that's been kneaded too long. Nearby, Etienne snores beneath a blanket that used to be beige. Now it's a muddy abstract painting of last night's storm. A single bell note rings from the belfry they abandoned yesterday down in the valley. 3 slow tolls, then silence. Enemy signal or a farmer's dawn call? No one knows. The uncertainty hums louder than the insects waking in the grass. De Montaigne is already pacing, gauntlets tucked under his arm like scrolls of bad news. He eyes the valley floor through a dented spyglass and mutters numbers no one wants to hear. Enemy infantry, 400, maybe 5. Crossbows glinting like dragonfly wings. And behind them, lumbering shapes too distant to identify, but the word trebuchet slips from his lips and hangs in the air as heavy as July humidity. Breakfast is a brittle joke. 2 mouthfuls of oatcake, a strip of dried pork, and a swallow of watered wine so hot it tastes like steeped leather. The men chew in silence, listening to the slow hiss of sunlight heating plate. Renaud watches steam coil from dew droplets on his vambrace, realizes he's about to wear a personal greenhouse again, and suppresses a shiver that's half dread, half chilled remembrance of the night's rain. Constanza appears with a wedge of honeycomb pilfered from a ruined hillside hive. She breaks off pieces, handing them around. Sticky gold sugar explodes on Renaud's tongue, a fleeting miracle before heat bleaches taste buds blank. She grins. Fuel for the furnace. Everyone chuckles, low and tired. Time to armor up. Etienne holds breastplate open. Renaud slips arms through, the metal sighing against linen. Even at dawn, it's already warm. Straps cinch, buckles snap, and the world narrows to the tunnel of a visor once more. Renaud's heartbeat echoes inside his own skull, amplified by steel like a drum in a cistern. De Montaigne assigns positions. Lancers form center wedge facing the valley path. Swordsmen guard flanks. Archers post along scattered boulders higher on the ridge to rain arrows downhill. The plan hinges on the enemy charging uphill through scorching sun while his knights, cooking but elevated, break their momentum. A gamble with sweat as the ante. Hour 1 after dawn. The ridge transforms into a forge. Sunlight ricochets off helmets, blinding anyone who glances sideways. Renaud rotates feet constantly to avoid burning soles through his mail chausses. Winds are non-existent. Even the usual ridge breeze collapsed under the weight of heat like a wounded standard-bearer. Etienne offers water in a goatskin. Renaud drinks sparingly, remembering yesterday's rationing disaster. He hands it back, watching as the boy, face scarlet, lifts it to his own lips only to find it empty. Renaud curses, orders him to fetch more from the hidden barrel shoved under a tarp. Etienne nods, jogs off, wobbling. A distant horn blares. Echoes bounce between cliff walls like rolling thunder. Enemy column begins ascent. From this vantage, they resemble a glimmering centipede, hundreds of helmets clinking link by link. Renaud's stomach tightens, not with fear, but with the knowledge that every man down there is sweating just as he is, but climbing with gravity pulling against them. Misery meet advantage. Guillaume signals archers. First volley arcs, a flock of black swifts disappearing into glare before descending. Screams echo, but the column keeps coming, shield tops now clustering like a roof of metal scales. Heat thickens. Renaud's arming shirt darkens with fresh sweat, salt stinging raw patches along his sides. He flexes knees, creaking leather, ticking rivets. He counts breaths. In through nose, the smell of hot linen. Out through mouth, the taste of yesterday's dust.
Enemy crossbows loose. Bolts whistle upward, slowed by incline but still lethal. One clacks against Renaud's left spalder, glancing off. Another finds a gap beneath Sir Henri's armpit. The knight drops with a sound like a sack of armor scrap. Etienne, returning with water, freezes. Renaud drags the boy behind a stone outcrop, forces waterskin into his hands. Drink. They share long gulps, ignoring ration rules, because right now, pulse outraces math.
When Lancers get the order to move, the sun is only mid-morning, but already stands high enough to turn helmet interiors into baking pans. Renaud feels each exhale return as humid backlash. He lowers visor, sees nothing but slit-framed glare and enemy shields 10 yards downslope. They charge. Mud from last night hardened to jagged plates. Horses slip, regain, muscles shuddering under armor blankets. Hooves strike flint, sparks jump. Then collision, lance tips splintering on shields, shock waves ricocheting up arms. The clangor is immense, but strangely muffled inside helm. Sounds like a festival drum beaten underwater. Renaud's lance shatters against a commander's buckler, fragments pepper 2 footmen. He discards shaft, draws sword. Swing, spark, parry, leather-tied grip slickens. He steps sideways, plate greaves clanging. Heat and adrenaline warp time. Each heartbeat stretches like molten glass. Enemy numbers press upward. De Montaigne's wedge bulges, then breaks. Knights find themselves in clusters, separated by swirling melee. Renaud and Constanza fight back to back, her longsword humming, his shield deflecting arrows. Etienne remains at edge with spare weapons. Face pale under helmet he's too young to bear. Suddenly, a guttural roar. Enemy reinforcements crest ridge further east. Having climbed a goat path, scouts missed. Flank compromised. Archers swing but reposition too late. Crossbow bolts pierce too. Others retreat behind rocks. De Montaigne bellows for fallback to secondary cairns, rock piles prepared at dawn. Organized retreat uphill under sun? Cruelty incarnate. Yet they move, sweat creating rivulets of dark streaks down mail. Every step uphill drags like lifting anvils with shoelaces. Renaud's vision blurs. Heat shimmering inside helm now visible, like personal mirage. He lifts visor briefly to breathe. Arrow scrapes brow, reminds him risk. Closes visor, curses. They reach cairns, reform shield wall. Enemy gathers for second push. Between lines, the dead cook in midday blaze. Flies already cluster. Smell of blood mixes with hot metal tang, creating nauseating stew. Water gone, Etienne panting, eyes glassy. Renaud orders him to shade behind boulder. Boy obeys, collapsed but alive. De Montaigne whispers new plan. Hold 20 minutes. Allied relief from south should appear near ruined mill. Hold or roast. Simple. The next clash is slower, exhaustion heavy as plate. Swords scrape with less force, parries turn into shoulder checks. Renaud starts seeing odd colors at edge of vision. Sunspots or onset of heat stroke? He recalls Sir Auguste last night and forces himself to blink hard, breathe slow. Constanza slashes down a halberdier, then sways, drops to one knee.
Renaud shields her, fends off spear thrusts, drags her behind shield wall. She rips off helm, vomits bile, cheeks blotched crimson. He tears water skin from fallen squire, trickles last drops onto her tongue, over her scalp. Steam rises.
Enemy trumpets sound again, but from valley this time, not ridge. Both armies pause, confused. Down slope, banners unfamiliar. Blue griffin on gold, ride fast, lances tilted toward enemy flank. Allied relief, finally. Adversaries hesitate. Some turn to face new threat. De Montaigne seizes moment, orders downhill counter-surge. What remains of his knights obey, stumbling more than running, but momentum matters. Heat forgives nothing, but adrenaline loans energy at cruel interest. Renaud charges alongside Guillaume, swords high. They smash into turned backs. Enemy line crumples. Relief cavalry slams opposite side. Sandwich complete. Battle ends within minutes. Scrappy rout into trees where armorless rebels flee lighter and faster. Victorious, yet victory tastes of rust and sweat. Sun now at zenith, hammering skulls with brutal clarity. Renaud peels off helm. Air scalds lungs like bakery furnace door. But he breathes freedom, no immediate threat. Allied commander, Sir Isambard, greets de Montaigne, exchanging curt bows while medics tend wounded. They speak of larger campaign shifts, but Renaud barely listens. He kneels by Etienne, who sips watered wine and smiles weakly. Constanza, revived, reclines against cartwheel, inhaling mint sprig like holy relic. Late afternoon, bodies buried in shallow graves at Ridgecrest. Renaud helps lower Sir Henri, reciting psalm in cracked voice. Shovels lift dust so hot it's half-baked already. Camp shifts toward shade of nearby pine copse. Squires string up sheets for sun tarps. Armor pieces spread on grass to cool. They shimmer dull red like dragon scales after flight. Renaud inspects dents. Prize arrowhead lodged between lame plates. He wonders how any of them will polish, oil, and don these shells again tomorrow. Isambard's surgeons pass clay cups of barley water steeped with vinegar and salt, the medieval electrolyte formula. Knights gulp greedily. Some gag, but none refuse. Renaud tastes sour life returning to limbs. Evening's first breeze arrives at last, warm but moving. It slips through arming garments, lifting edges, wicking damp. Men sigh audible relief. Some laugh deliriously. Someone proposes cutting slits under arm seams for permanent vents. Another warns smiths will complain about tampering. Consensus? Smiths aren't here. Sweat is. As dusk settles, de Montaigne calls circle around central fire. Flames crackle under pot of river crayfish, onions, and yesterday's honeycomb remnants for sweetness. Steam smells like victory stew. He addresses weary faces. Today, heat fought us as fiercely as any enemy. Tomorrow, we fight heat first. New orders. Shirts soaked each hour. Helms lifted whenever arrows aren't flying. And for God's sake, you cook in kitchens, not in armor. Laughter, ragged but earnest, ripples through ranks. Morale, a spark rekindled. Renaud steps aside, overlooking ridge into cooling valley. Fireflies emerge again, tiny lanterns echoing first night. He lifts visor, feels honest breeze brush sweat-dried cheeks, and for a second realizes he might survive July after all.
But story doesn't end on one ridge. Tomorrow they march south, deeper into summer's open palm, iron fate clenched tight. Renaud turns back to camp, where Etienne waves him over, bowl of crayfish stew in hand. He smiles, trudges to warmth that won't burn him. And you, still here, still listening, apparently haven't fainted in this heat either. If you're parched, hydrate now. Then slam that subscribe button like a visor jam strike and share this episode with anyone who thinks medieval life was simpler. Spoiler, simpler doesn't mean cooler. Before we crank the bellows on this furnace of a tale, pause your scroll-happy thumb, smash that like button like a hammer striking a red-hot rivet, and subscribe so you never miss another episode of Medieval Misery Therapy. While you're at it, comment with your personal heat hack, whether it's a desk fan the size of a wind turbine or a secret stash of freezer pops. Because our knights could use ideas that don't involve heat stroke or goose fat ointment. Ready? Excellent. Saddle up because dawn is peeling away the last scraps of night and our ironclad parade is about to march straight into the belly of July. The ridge behind them lies eerily quiet, littered with fused footprints where steel once seared the dirt. Renaud tastes copper on his tongue from a split lip he didn't notice until this morning. Etienne fusses, dabbing a rag soaked in yesterday's barley vinegar tonic across the cut. The liquid stings like confession, but Renaud barely flinches. A knight's pain catalog has grown too thick to file new entries. De Montaigne strides through camp, cloak snapping in reluctant morning breeze. Orders are shouted, move by first light, hug the river gorge, and reach St. Marth's Keep before nightfall. St. Marth means stone corridors, deep wells, and rumor has it, cisterns cold enough to numb fingertips. Motivation sizzles louder than the camp kettle. The march begins. By the 6th mile, heat already drapes itself across shoulders like wet canvas. Yesterday's rain left shallow puddles that now vaporize, sending ghostly wisps curling around ankles. Horses snort plumes of steam that smell faintly of hot leather and wilted clover. Etienne trots behind Renaud, carrying 2 water skins, both half full, which essentially qualifies as lavish this week. They follow a riverside track hemmed by cliffs on one side and sluggish water on the other. The river's surface mirrors the sun, turning into a road of liquid silver. Its shimmer somehow makes everything feel hotter. Knights dip gloved hands whenever terrain allows, flicking droplets up under breastplates in a desperate DIY swamp cooler maneuver. Trickles run down torsos, offering 5 seconds grace before they're gone. Guillaume rides ahead, evaluating shaded sections. When he finds an overhang of rock, he signals halt. Knights shuffle underneath, grateful yet wary. After 5 minutes, the shade turns stifling. The trapped air refuses circulation. De Montaigne barks, "Move!" The convoy lurches forward again, proving that sometimes relief is a mirage with marketing issues. Field surgery of the hottest kind. Around midday, Lady Constance's squire trips on sun-bleached roots and twists an already tender ankle. The girl bites her lip, refusing tears. Master Hugo kneels, strips off her boot, steam spirals as if her foot might actually be cooking. He palpates, frowns, swelling like bread dough. He rummages in satchel, producing willow bark and a strip of linen soaked in mint oil. He instructs Etienne to fetch cold river mud. Renaud raises a brow. Mud treatment sounds suspicious, but Hugo shrugs. Evaporative cooling, sir. Nature's poultice. They smear the ankle in gritty sludge, then wrap it. Almost immediately, the squire exhales relief. Evaporation leaches heat, dulling pain. New camp rule: mud is medicine.
Innovation or desperation on the move.
Inspired, Etienne scrambles back to the river, filling bladders with water and handfuls of cattail fluff. He returns, stuffs the soaked fluff into gaps behind Renaud's knee and under armpits. "It'll hold moisture longer, my lord," he says, face crimson but proud. Renaud contemplates the absurdity of walking air conditioner pads, but soon a blessed cool seeps into creases normally reserved for scalding. He pats the boy's shoulder. Sometimes genius wears a muck-spattered grin. News trickles from Isambard's scouts. The valley ahead harbors abandoned charcoal kilns, stone igloos once used by foresters. Some still stand. Their thick walls promise dark, sun-proof interiors. The column changes course, angling upslope among oak and ash. Every leaf overhead feels like a mercy petition signed in chlorophyll.
Charcoal huts turned lifeboats.
They find the first kiln by mid-afternoon. Its blackened doorway yawns like a whale's mouth. Inside, air is heavy with soot, but, miracle, cool. Knights crawl in groups of 3, kneeling on cinder floor to soak reprieve. Breastplates come off. Someone cracks a joke about armor-shaped tan lines. Laughter rings inside the kiln, echoing in low bass notes. For 10 minutes, they are not warriors, but roasted pilgrims granted Shade's absolution. When they emerge, faces smeared coal black, the transformation borders ritual. Etienne points at Renaud's smudged cheeks. "Now you're half knight, half chimney sweep." Renaud smiles. Humor is lighter than chainmail. They leapfrog from kiln to kiln, resting in short, blessed shifts. The path between is a gauntlet of sunbeams and bramble, but morale ticks upward. Each bunker becomes a checkpoint in some overheated game. Trouble brews in the brambles. At the third kiln, 2 archers standing watch spy movement in underbrush, uniforms of last night's routed rebels. Apparently they circled ahead, hoping to cut the trail. A skirmish erupts under blazing canopy. Arrows sail, metal rings. Renaud grabs sword, charges with 6 others. In dense brush, full armor becomes a punishment. Vines hook eye slits, branches scrape faceplates. Rebels wear partial mail, lighter and more maneuverable. One swings a billhook, catches Renaud's thigh plate, denting but not carving. The rebound jars his hip, he curses. Constanza ducks a saber swipe, counters with pommel strike to rebel temple. He drops. Another lunges at Etienne, still half boy, but the squire thrusts broken spear butt square into the attacker's gut. Rebel folds, retching. Renaud dispatches 2 more with calculated strokes. The rest scatter. Adrenaline briefly drowns the heat, but once breath slows, sweat surges anew, harsher than before. Master Hugo bandages small cuts. He warns that wounds fester faster in heat. Flies already inspect new blood like tavern patrons evaluating ale. He slaps them away, smears a paste of honey and powdered charcoal onto torn skin, poor man's antiseptic. The River Gambit. Near dusk, they reach a gorge where river narrows into rapids. The only crossing, a rickety beam bridge baking under orange sky. The planks are hot enough to scorch boots. De Montaigne insists heavy armor cross 2 at a time to avoid collapse. Knights wait in queue, sun battering their backs while they shift foot to foot like restless kettles. Etienne strips to linen, splashes into shallows, wetting spare cloths. He drapes them over helmets baking in line, a makeshift parasol.
Renaud's turn arrives. He steps onto the beam. Wood creaks. The river gurgles below like laughter of a trickster god. Halfway, dizziness hits, a sudden spin of horizon. The beam tilts. He wobbles, arms pinwheeling, weighty plates dragging equilibrium. For a heartbeat, armor feels like anchor, not shield. He drops to one knee, clutches support rope. Etia's voice, "Steady, my lord." He breathes, counts, rises, continues. On far side, knees quake, but he stands. A lesson. July turns crossings into crucibles.
They camp beyond bridge in clearing ringed by tall pine. Air smells resinous, less stifling. De Montaigne assigns double sentries. Rebels likely linger. Fires are forbidden, too visible. Knights settle to cold supper. Hard cheese, bruised apples, and river water flavored with mint stems.
Night without fire.
Without flame, darkness wraps close. Stars pulse overhead. Icy diamonds mocking the earthly furnace. Renaud removes cuirass, hanging it on spear. The metal radiates stored sun for an hour before cooling enough to touch. Etienne wipes it with greased rag, whispering half-remembered psalms against rust. Nearby soldiers strip gambesons, wringing sweat like washing linens. Pungent steam rises. Sleep arrives in broken shards. Renaud dreams of snowflakes large as shields, melting on contact with his skin. He wakes drenched, heartbeat racing. Crickets hiss. He gulps water, tries again.
Dawn 2. Hell's Encore.
Before sky even blushes, air turns syrupy. Breakfast is boiled wheat soaked in river water, lukewarm gruel that slides down throats reluctantly. Still, calories equal life. Demont gathers them. Today's push to St. Marth Keep must finish before noon, else enemy reinforcements beat them there. Knights don armor early. It's cooler than waiting until sun climbs. Still, metal is clammy, unforgiving. Etienne lashes a soaked linen hood beneath Renaud's helm, evaporation cloak for the skull. It drips into eyes but cools brow. Trade-off accepted. Approach to St. Marth. The keep sits on bluff like a crouched beast. Towers whitewashed but sun-yellowed. As they crest last ridge, archers on walls spot them. Horn blasts answer, friendly. Gate opens. Within, courtyards buzz. Garrison boiling water for pitch. Prepared to repel, not host. De Montaigne rides in, salutes captain. All eyes widen at sight of his sun-battered column, armor tarnished charcoal stripe, faces soot-smeared. Captain leads them to cistern courtyard. Stone stairs descend into gloom. One by one, knights shuffle down, emerging minutes later, drenched, grinning like children. Renaud steps into chamber. Air 20 degrees cooler. He kneels, scoops water, pours it overhead. Shock of cold slams nerves. He gasps, laughs, maybe cries. Breastplate steams like quenched blade. Etienne and other squires haul buckets upstairs, dousing horses, filling troughs. Mules bray in delight. The physician's verdict. Master Hugo establishes a triage corner. He checks every night for early heat illness, dry tongue, rapid pulse, blurred vision. 4 are benched, ordered to rest in shaded cellars stripped to linen. Honey salt drink administered. Renaud passes exam, but feels like garment stitched with fatigue. He sits, back against barrel, closes eyes. Cool stones bleed warmth from his spine, a mercy. Constanza arrives, hair damp, cheeks finally natural hue. She shows Renaud a rolled parchment. St. Marth's steward keeps records of Saracen snow logistics. Mountain caravans hauling packed ice in straw all the way to coastal bazaars. If Saracens can import snow, perhaps de Montaigne's army can replicate on smaller scale. They hatch idea. Dispatch fast riders to nearby alpine village. Purchase blocks from glacier caves. Rush them in wagons wrapped in wool. Use ice to chill armor interiors before March. Maybe survive August. It sounds mad and profoundly enticing. Council of Cool Heads. That afternoon, officers convene in shaded hall lined with faded tapestries. Topic: heat mitigation strategy. Renaud presents ice run plan. Some scoff, citing cost and melt time, but Constanza counters with numbers. A single block could chill water for hundreds. Even partial melt while transporting cools wagons, horses, men. De Montaigne approves test. Dispatch 2 riders tonight with coin purses and letters sealed. Another suggestion surfaces: lighten armor for specific troops. The male-only debate rekindles. This time, de Montaigne relents partially. Scouts and archers may strip to mail and gambeson during rapid maneuvers, but knights in primary engagements remain full-plated until blacksmiths replace code of chivalry. Laughter bursts, rare and needed. They also craft wind cloaks. Squares of linen, soaked, twisted, tied across back vent slits using leather laces. Walk and cloth flaps, fanning inside of cuirass. Primitive air conditioner.
Evening respite and an ominous omen.
At sunset, Citadel cooks prepare barley stew with river eel and handfuls of imported pepper. Spicy heat ironically helps them sweat, cooling skin. Knights eat around torches, trading stories of frostbite campaigns simply to fantasize about cold. One grizzled veteran details a winter siege where snot froze mid-breath. The company listens like a bedtime fairy tale.
Suddenly, lookout horns sound again. Scout gallops through gate bearing blackened arrow. Enemies burning summons, found on road south. Message clear. Rebels signal for alliance with distant baron, harboring his own grievances. Larger warfront looms, timing uncertain. Heat may soon be least of Renaud's worries.
Night experiments. Before turning in, Etienne and other squires conduct trial. They submerge Renaud's vambrace in cistern for full hour, then attach it. Metal bone cold. Renaud shivers ecstatically. He flexes fingers until warmth returns. They note timings. 15 minutes of cooling, 45 until reheat. Data collection, medieval style. They also line inside of Constance's helm with thin layer of beeswax mixed with crushed mint. Scent revives senses. Wax insulates slightly, delaying heat soak. Innovation by candlelight. Another sleepless night? Not quite. With stone walls radiating chill, Renaud actually sleeps deeply. Dreams drift to mountaintop snowfields again, but this time he isn't melting them. Instead, he carves blocks, loading them onto sleds bound for his sweltering comrades below. He wakes smiling, a plan in subconscious rehearsal. Morning light filters through arrow slits. Air inside keep is still, but cooler than outside. He rises, finds sutler scribes drafting requisitions for extra linen and willow bark. Meanwhile, Hugo teaches squires to weave cattail cooling pads as standard gear. A movement forms, the Order of the Cold Knights, jokes Guillaume. Before march, de Montaigne addresses assembled troops from parapet. The sun is a tyrant we cannot slay, but we can steal its sword. Cheers echo. And so they gather helmets, strap cooled breastplates fitted with bark vents, sling damp linen wind cloaks. Renaud mounts, feeling weight as usual, but within him sparks an ember of optimism, ironic given how much they crave cold. The portcullis rises. Sun greets them like a glaring emperor. Somewhere ahead, rebels muster. Alliances coalesce, and July sharpens its blades of light. Hit pause on whatever melt-worthy heatwave meme you were about to post, smash that like button like you're cracking open the world's last block of ice, subscribe if you crave more medieval misery therapy, and, vital step, drop a comment telling us your most ridiculous summer survival hack. Does sleeping in a bathtub of iced tea count? We need intel. All set? Good, because dawn has barely yawned and the sun already looks smug. Today, our scorched brigade is wagering everything, steel, sweat, and one desperate ice run on surviving July's grand finale. The portcullis groans open. Wind, even the minty little whisper that blew through the courtyard at dawn, vanishes the moment they leave the cool stone shadow. Renaud feels it first, a punch of furnace air straight through the eye slits. Etienne marches behind, tottering under saddlebags stuffed with damp linen wraps, beeswax mint helmet liners, cattail cooling pads, and the precious new contraption dubbed the Glacier Grenade. Leather flasks filled with half-melted snow slush, each cork drilled with pinprick holes. Squeeze, and a misty spray clouds inside your helm. It smells like hope. Ice on the horizon. Before they reach the foothills, a dust plume appears, a wagon team galloping hell for leather down the gorge. The lead rider waves white cloth flecked with frost. Etienne hoops loud enough to spook sparrows. The ice caravan has returned 3 days ahead of schedule. 2 stout oxen haul a wooden crate swaddled in wet burlap, wool, and pine boughs. Even 10 paces away, air radiates cool. So delicious knights forget dignity and lean in like starving pilgrims sniffing miracle bread. The delivery men, cheeks pink from alpine chill, unload shimmering blocks, blue-white, still clinking like glass. Constanza oversees rationing. Armor pieces come off in assembly line. Each cuirass spends exactly 6 minutes hugged to a slab. Each helmet gets a quick snow bath. Interiors rubbed with a sliver of ice that hisses on contact. Steam rises, and for once it's not from their bodies. When Renaud finally straps chilled breastplate back on, he shivers. The first pleasant shiver since May. March of the frost touched. With cold armor, feet feel lighter, strides longer. Scouts run ahead, reporting rebel forces entrenched on chalk uplands, sun-blasted open ground. Perfect, de Montaigne muses. Heat will punish both sides, but their enemy lacks any refrigeration miracle. Advantage, ice knights. They tie strips of linen around wrists dipped in melted snow, arteries cooled at pulse points.
Hugo distributes saltwater tincture, prevent hyponatremia from all the zealous drinking. He also hands out tiny vials of vinegar rosemary. One sniff jolts consciousness when heat stupor threatens.
Enemy sighted and already sweating.
By mid-morning, the rebel line glints on crest. Motley banners, mismatched armor, mostly mail shirts, leather jerkins. Some fighters sport bare arms, slick with grease to deflect blade glints, also to pretend they're not cooking. A drummer beats listless cadence. Even sound waves seem sluggish, dehydrated. Renault's company fans into formation, lances forward, shields slung. De Montaigne raises visor, voice booming. For Saint Marthe and the right to not die of sunstroke. Knights laugh, crazy, cracked laughter, but morale skyrockets. They have chilled plate, wind cloaks, and glacier grenades strapped like holy relics. Rebels have, well, enthusiasm.
Clash in the Powder Keg Valley.
First charge. Horses thunder, earth shakes, but dust instantly turns to choking clouds. Temperature jumps inside helms. Renaud squeezes his slush flask. Icy mist coats lips, trickles down chin guard. He smacks into rebel pike wall. Lance shatters 2 spears, unhorses 1 man. Constanza rides flank, saber flashing. Heat roars in ears like blacksmith bellows.
Within minutes, melee descends to foot combat, too tight for cavalry. Knights dismount, swords ringing. Rebels swing axes, seizing any moment, plate gaps expose flesh. Guillaume catches arrow in pauldron. Wood cracks, tip lodges but fails to pierce. He yells thanks to the mountain ice block that tempered his steel hours earlier. Superstition maybe, but it sparks fierce grin. Heat stroke. The invisible archer.
Battle rhythm surges, stalls, surges again. But then a quieter killer arrives. Foes begin to sway, weapons drooping. One rebel kneels mid-swing, vomiting bile. Another collapses, face purple. Their light armor should have helped, yet dehydration strikes harder. Many carried half-empty skins, reserving water for flight. Renaud's men rotate swigging mint viner mix, staying sharp, albeit sweaty. Etienne races through lines, refilling flasks with melted snow still pooled in wagon trough. He earns new nickname, Snow Squire. Every time he splashes squads' necks, they bellow war cries louder. Rebels view this from distance, baffled. Are these devils drenched in ice water? Morale cracks.
Turning tide with science and silk. Constanza unfurls silk banner dyed deep blue, signal for phase frost. Archers ringed behind main line, light fuses on small clay pots, ice water inside, corked with beeswax. Heated in coals just enough to build pressure, they whip them overhead, pots burst mid-arc, releasing cool mist onto front ranks. Physics questionable, spectacle undeniable. Knights cheer, rebels gape at cloudbursts like divine intervention.
Under cover of confusion, Renaud, Hugo, and 10 others drive wedge toward rebel captain. Heat haze distorts edges of vision, making adversaries shimmer like mirages. But cold breastplate hugging chest steadies pulse. They reach command post, just a banner planted by cairn. Captain draws sword, but his gambeson dark with sweat, arms heavy. Renaud parries twice, ripostes, flats blade against man's helmet. Captain yields, dropping to knees more from exhaustion than fear. Trumpeters seize moment, sounding enemy retreat. Aftermath. Under blistering noon. Rebel survivors scatter into scrub where sunlight punishes them anew. Knights hold plain, but cannot celebrate long. Sun climbs to zenith. Even chilled armor now warms ominously. They drag prisoners beneath awnings hastily erected from shields. Water rations flow freely. Victory parade postponed in favor of medical triage.
Master Hugo sets up under olive tree, shade patch trembling like mirage. He checks skin turgor, pupils, pulse. For those beyond oral hydration, he improvises, goat bladder tubes delivering diluted wine directly into mouths as they lie supine. Primitive IV, perhaps, but it saves 3.
Renaud walks perimeter. He passes rebel wounded, receiving same care as knights. De Montaigne insisted. War against heat transcends banners. Today's enemy is the sky. Constanza scribbles notes. How many collapsed? How long ice lasted? What methods proved best? She already imagines summertime field manual on cooling the combatant. When the sky catches fire.
Late afternoon, thunderheads stack over western hills, towering anvils of wrath. Lightning forks, no rain yet, but wind gusts arrive like dragon exhalations. Dust devils swirl battleground ash. Knights tie canvas over ice crate, anchor with stakes. Etienne marvels, "We prayed for cool air, not brimstone." Renaud chuckles, "Weather gods have sense of humor."
When storm finally breaks, it does so violently. First, raindrops sizzle on helmets, then sheets lash down. Armor becomes gutter system, channeling torrents off greaves. Some men spin with arms outstretched, laughing hysterically. Others simply stare skyward, mouths open. Temperature plummets 20 degrees in 10 minutes. Steam erupts from every surface. Mud forms instantly, swallowing boots. Horses neigh, half terrified, half ecstatic. The world smells of iron, wet grass, and ozone. It is relief, nearly biblical. Camp, mud, and lightning counsel. They drag wagons to higher ground, pitch tents between limestone outcrops. Lightning nails the ridge thrice, setting scrub aflame. Rain snuffs it seconds later. Eventually, storm moves east, leaving clean, cool twilight. Knights gather near cookfire for first hot meal without fear of spontaneous combustion. Rabbit stew with handful of dried fennel and precious dash of salt. They eat slowly, savoring simple act of breathing without scalding lungs. De Montaigne stands, cloak dripping, to address them. He speaks not of glory, but gratitude. To mountain folk who mined snow, to squires who turned cattails into cooling pads, to Hugo who kept hearts beating, to every knight who ladled water for friend and foe. He ends, "We cannot command the sun, but we can outwit it." Cheers, low and resonant, drift under stars now clear. Constellations pop, icy pinpricks on velvet. Some men shiver, irony thick. They fetch blankets. Renaud removes helmet, finally feels breeze across hair matted with coal dust and mint oil. For the first time in weeks, he's actually cold. A canopy of quiet. Night watch routines resume, yet atmosphere softer, like the heat burnt everyone's anger away. Renaud and Constanza patrol parapet of makeshift palisade. Moon silverplates puddles. They speak of winter campaigns, how men will complain of frozen hinges and brittle bowstrings.
Human nature, always cursing current season.
Constanza shows him parchment copy of revised supply plan, establishing permanent ice route using multiple alpine way stations, storing blocks in straw pits near front. The concept might revolutionize summer warfare if purse strings approve. Renaud smiles wearily. Progress sometimes begins with misery.
Letter to the next generation.
Before sleep, Renaud dictates note to his sister's little boy, training in Squire Hall.
Dear Henri,
Armor teaches humility. It guards your heart, but can cook it too. Remember that steel is only as strong as the man who maintains it, and the water that cools him. Should you ever ride in July, pack twice the water you deem sufficient. Wear linen like it's a second soul, and thank every cloud you meet.
Your uncle, who once survived the hottest of summers.
Etienne seals later inside beeswax-coated sachet, promising delivery when campaign ends.
Sunrise Epilogue.
Morning unveils crisp air, dew on pauldrons. The army readies to march again, this time northwards, away from lowland inferno. Armor feels manageable, almost comfortable. News arrives. King's envoys declare rebels vanquished, peace terms negotiated. Desmontaigne's force is ordered home, journey of 2 weeks through forest shade and highland breezes. They will ride, not roast.
Knights gather gear. Renaud claps Etienne's shoulder. We lived another day of July. Miracle enough. They mount up. Columns snake along ridge under pastel sky. Behind them, battlefield already sprouting green shoots from night rain. A reminder that even scorched earth recovers, given cool breath and time.
Final lesson for the audience. And so, dear midnight viewer still watching with phone balanced on pillow, we've trudged across blistering plateaus, soaked armor in snow, squabbled with sun itself, and emerged marginally less crispy. Remember, medieval knights weren't sweaty caricatures just for laughs. They battled a climate crisis every summer long before buzzwords and AC units. Their ingenuity, mud poultices, cattail pads, ice caravans, echoes today when we slap gel packs on necks or rig fans in windows. If this torrid trek quenched your curiosity, reward the algorithmic gods. Like, subscribe, share with that friend who swears chainmail bikinis are practical. And when next you gripe about a heat wave, picture Renaud on a wobbling beam bridge, armor heating like skillet, dreaming of glaciers. Suddenly your broken air conditioner seems downright luxurious. Until our next chronicle of historical discomfort, stay hydrated, keep your cool, and sleep easy, knowing at least you're not clanking around in 45 pounds of portable oven under a medieval sun.